Barron Trump had always been known for his quiet demeanor and towering presence, but few knew about his kindness. At his private high school, one person who caught his attention was Mr. Jenkins, the elderly janitor who had worked there for decades. Mr. Jenkins was beloved by students, always offering a warm smile and words of encouragement. Despite his hardships, he never complained. One afternoon, Barron overheard a conversation between two teachers discussing how Mr. Jenkins had been struggling. His old car had finally broken down, and without reliable transportation, he had been taking multiple buses to get to school, sometimes arriving late and exhausted. Something about the story stuck with Barron, and he knew he had to do something. With quiet determination, Barron spoke to his parents. Understanding his genuine desire to help, they supported his idea, but he insisted on handling it himself. After weeks of planning, he found the perfect SUV, reliable, comfortable, and safe. The day finally arrived. After school, Barron asked a few classmates and staff members to gather in the parking lot. Mr. Jenkins was called outside, confused by the unexpected attention. When he stepped out and saw Barron standing beside a shiny black SUV with a big red bow, his eyes widened in disbelief. "This is for you, Mr. Jenkins," Barron said with a sincere smile. "I heard about your car troubles, and I wanted to make sure you had a reliable way to get here every day." For a moment, the old janitor was speechless. His hands trembled as he touched the hood of the car, his eyes welling with tears. "Son, I don't know what to say," he whispered, his voice cracking. "No one has ever done something like this. For me." The students and staff erupted in applause as Mr. Jenkins wiped his eyes, shaking his head in disbelief. He pulled Barron into a heartfelt hug, overcome with gratitude. "You have no idea what this means to me," he said. "This isn't just a car. It's a lifeline." The story quickly spread beyond the school, touching hearts nationwide. People were moved by the quiet generosity of the youngest Trump, proving that true kindness needs no spotlight. But for Barron, it was never about recognition. He simply saw someone in need and chose to act. And in that moment, with tears of gratitude streaming down Mr. Jenkins's face, it was clear that a single act of kindness could change a life forever. The days that followed were filled with an outpouring of love and admiration. News of Barron's act of kindness spread across social media, making headlines on various platforms. People from all walks of life shared the story, praising his generosity and compassion. Mr. Jenkins, now the proud owner of a brand new SUV, found his daily life transformed. No longer forced to take multiple buses or worry about unreliable transportation, he arrived at school early, energized and happier than ever. Every morning he would park his new vehicle in the same spot, wiping it down with a small cloth as if it were a prized possession. One day, Barron walked past him in the hallway, and Mr. Jenkins stopped him. "I need you to know something," the janitor said, his voice filled with emotion. "This isn't just about the car. You gave me something even more valuable. Dignity. You reminded me that people still care, that kindness still exists." Barron nodded humbly, offering a small smile. "You've given so much to this school, Mr. Jenkins. You deserved something in return." But the story didn't end there. Inspired by Barron's act of generosity, students and faculty began finding new ways to help those in need. A group of seniors started a fundraiser for school staff facing hardships, while others volunteered at local shelters. Barron's gesture had ignited a ripple effect of kindness, proving that one selfless act could inspire an entire community. As for Mr. Jenkins, he continued his work with renewed purpose, his steps a little lighter and his heart a little fuller. And every time he turned the key in his new SUV, he was reminded that sometimes the smallest moments of kindness leave the deepest impact. As weeks passed, the story of Barron Trump's generosity continued to inspire. Messages poured in from people across the country, many sharing their own experiences of kindness or how they had been moved to help others. Mr. Jenkins became somewhat of a local celebrity, often stopped by students and teachers who wanted to congratulate him or simply tell him how much he meant to the school. One morning, as he was unlocking a classroom door, The principal approached him with a letter in hand. "This just arrived for you," she said with a warm smile. "I think you'll want to read it." Curious, Mr. Jenkins unfolded the letter. His eyes widened as he realized it was from a former student, someone he had mentored years ago when they were struggling in school. The letter detailed how Mr. Jenkins' words of encouragement had given them the motivation to keep going, and now they had graduated college and landed their dream job. The student wrote, "You probably don't even remember, but you changed my life. I just wanted to say thank you." Tears welled in his eyes again, just as they had the day Barron surprised him with the SUV. He had always tried to do his job with kindness, never expecting anything in return. And yet, here he was, realizing just how many lives he had touched over the years. Barron, too, had been changed by the experience. He saw how a single act of kindness had the power to uplift not just one person, but an entire community. He continued to focus on his education, but made a quiet promise to himself. Whenever he had the chance to help someone, he would. Because, in the end, it wasn't about wealth or recognition. It was about making the world just a little bit better, one good deed at a time. And so, life went on at the school, but something was different. There was a stronger sense of unity, of compassion, of people looking out for one another. It all started with one unexpected gift, but the impact would be felt for years to come. As the months passed, the impact of Barron Trump's act of kindness only grew stronger. Mr. Jenkins, once just the quiet janitor in the background, was now a symbol of resilience and appreciation within the school community. Students began greeting him with even more enthusiasm. Teachers checked in on him more often, and small acts of kindness became the norm. One afternoon, as Barron was packing up his books in the library, Mr. Jenkins walked in. He had a small envelope in his hand and a nervous look on his face. "Barron, I know I already thanked you, but I wanted to give you something," Mr. Jenkins said, holding out the envelope. Barron hesitated before taking it, opening it carefully. Inside was a handwritten note and an old faded key. He read the note aloud. "Barron, I can never repay you for what you've done for me, but I want you to have this. This key belonged to my father. He was the hardest working man I ever knew, just like I tried to be. He always told me that a key isn't just for opening doors. It's a reminder that opportunity is everywhere, if you're willing to find it. You gave me an opportunity I never expected. Now, I want you to have this as a reminder that kindness always finds a way to open doors too." Barron looked up. His usually composed expression softened. He wasn't used to being the one at a loss for words, but in that moment, he understood just how much this gesture meant. He carefully closed his fingers around the key. "Thank you, Mr. Jenkins," he said quietly. "I'll keep this forever." The two shared a firm handshake, one of mutual respect, gratitude, and an unspoken understanding that their lives had been changed by this unexpected bond. Word of the exchange soon spread through the school, and once again, the ripple effect of kindness continued. Students who had once been indifferent started taking the time to appreciate the unnoticed heroes in their lives: the cafeteria workers, the security guards, the bus drivers. Inspired by Barron's gesture, a student-led initiative was formed to recognize staff members who often went unappreciated, ensuring that people like Mr. Jenkins knew just how valued they truly were. As for Barron, he continued to carry the key with him, a constant reminder that the smallest acts of generosity could create the biggest changes. And while the world often saw him only as the son of a famous family, those who knew him best saw something more. A young man who understood that true wealth wasn't about what you had, but about what you gave. And so, the story of a simple gift, a car, a key, a heartfelt thank you, became more than just a moment. It became a legacy, proving that in a world where people often look up to power and influence, the greatest impact can sometimes come from a quiet act of kindness, shared between two souls who simply chose to care. As the years went by, the story of Barron Trump's generosity became more than just a fleeting moment of kindness. It became a defining part of his legacy. Mr. Jenkins, now driving to work each day with ease, often told new students about the day his life changed. But he always made sure to emphasize that it wasn't just about the car. It was about someone seeing me, he would say. About realizing that no matter who you are or where you come from, kindness is the greatest gift you can give. Barron, now older and stepping into his own path, carried Mr. Jenkins's key with him everywhere, whether tucked inside his pocket during an important event or resting on his desk as a reminder. It was more than just an old piece of metal. It was a symbol of opportunity, gratitude, and the power of human connection. One day, years later, Barron returned to his former school for a visit. As he walked through the halls, memories flooded back, the laughter of students, the buzz of conversations, the familiar scent of old textbooks. He made his way toward the custodial office, hoping to see the man who had unknowingly shaped part of his outlook on life. But when he arrived, a younger janitor stood there instead. Barron's heart sank for a moment until he saw a framed photo on the desk. It was of Mr. Jenkins, smiling as always with a small plaque underneath, in loving memory of a man who taught us that kindness never goes unnoticed. Barron stood there silently, a wave of emotions washing over him. He hadn't known Mr. Jenkins, had passed, but seeing the tribute he realized something profound. His kindness had never faded. It had lived on through the students, the teachers, and the countless lives he had touched. As Barron turned to leave, the young janitor called out to him, "Hey, are you Barron Trump?" Barron nodded. "I just wanted to say, Mr. Jenkins talked about you all the time, said you reminded him that good people still exist in this world." Barron smiled softly, reaching into his pocket. He pulled out the key Mr. Jenkins had given him so many years ago and held it for a moment before closing his fingers around it again. "He reminded me of the same thing," Barron said, and with that, he walked away, knowing that no matter how much time passed, the impact of one small act of kindness would never fade. It had set something greater into motion, something that would continue to open doors long after both he and Mr. Jenkins were gone. Years passed, and Barron Trump's life took him to places he never imagined. Whether in business, philanthropy, or politics, the lessons he had learned from Mr. Jenkins stayed with him. Every decision he made, every opportunity he embraced, was guided by the belief that kindness and generosity were the true measures of a person's success. One day, while attending a charity event dedicated to helping underprivileged students, Barron found himself speaking with a young man who looked familiar. The young man introduced himself as Marcus Jenkins, Mr. Jenkins' grandson. "My grandfather used to tell me stories about you," Marcus said with a smile. "About the day you changed his life. That car, that moment, it meant the world to him. But what meant even more was that someone like you took the time to notice him, to appreciate him." Barron was taken aback. He hadn't known that Mr. Jenkins had a grandson, but hearing this brought a warmth to his heart. Marcus continued, "He always said that a single act of kindness can change everything. It stuck with me, and that's why I'm here. I got a scholarship because of a program inspired by your gesture. Now, I'm studying to become a teacher so I can make a difference in kids' lives, just like my grandfather did." Barron smiled, reaching into his pocket once more. The key Mr. Jenkins had given him was still there, worn smooth from years of carrying it. He held it out to Marcus. "Your grandfather gave me this," Barron said. "He told me it was a reminder that opportunity is everywhere if you're willing to find it. But I think it belongs with you now." Marcus hesitated, his eyes shining with emotion as he took the key. "Thank you," he whispered. "No," Barron said, shaking his head. "Thank him." As they parted ways, Barron felt a sense of peace. The story that had started so many years ago had come full circle. The impact of kindness had stretched beyond just one moment, one person. It had grown into something far greater, a legacy that would continue long after he and Mr. Jenkins were gone. Because in the end, it was never just about a car. It was about seeing people, lifting them up, and reminding the world that kindness has a way of finding its way back, again and again. Years later, Barron Trump stood on the steps of a prestigious university, addressing a crowd at a leadership and philanthropy summit. The event focused on how small acts of kindness could shape the world in unexpected ways. As he looked out at the audience, he spotted Marcus Jenkins sitting in the front row, now a respected teacher and community leader. Taking a deep breath, Barron began his speech. "There's a story I want to share with you," he said. "It's about a man who worked tirelessly, without asking for recognition. A man who dedicated his life to helping others in small but meaningful ways. A man who, without realizing it, taught me one of the most important lessons of my life." The crowd listened intently as Barron recounted the story of Mr. Jenkins, the janitor who had once struggled with transportation, the man who had inspired an entire school with his kindness and resilience. He spoke about the SUV, the key, and how that one moment of generosity had sparked something much larger than he ever expected. "But here's the most important part," Barron continued. "Kindness doesn't stop with one person. It creates ripples. That small gesture all those years ago didn't just change Mr. Jenkins' life. It changed mine. And it led to something even bigger." He gestured toward Marcus in the audience. His grandson, Marcus, is living proof of that ripple effect. Because of the values his grandfather instilled in him, because of the programs that were inspired by that one act of generosity, he's now shaping the lives of young people, just as his grandfather shaped mine. The audience erupted in applause, and Marcus, overcome with emotion, stood up, acknowledging the moment. Barron smiled. "So, if you take anything from this today, let it be this. Never underestimate the power of a single act of kindness. You may not see its full impact immediately, but trust me, it will go further than you ever imagined." As he stepped down from the podium, dozens of people approached him, sharing their own stories of how they had been inspired to help others. The impact of that one moment, years ago in a high school parking lot, had now extended across generations, proving that kindness truly had no limits. Later that evening, Barron and Marcus stood outside, reflecting on the journey that had led them both here. "You ever think about how different things would have been if you hadn't done what you did?" Marcus asked. Barron thought for a moment, then shook his head. "No, because deep down I believe that kindness finds a way. If it wasn't me, someone else would have helped your grandfather. That's the beauty of it. It's not about who gets the credit. It's about making sure the good keeps going." Marcus smiled, holding the key that Barron had given him. "Well, I promise you this. It will keep going." And with that, they parted ways, knowing that the story of Mr. Jenkins, of a car, of a key, and of the endless power of kindness was far from over. It would live on in every act of generosity, in every student Marcus inspired, in every door opened by those who chose to see others, not for what they had, but for the goodness they carried within them. Because kindness, once set in motion, never truly ends. It only grows. Years passed, and Barron Trump's journey continued, taking him into leadership roles where his commitment to kindness and philanthropy shaped the world around him. Though his last name carried weight, he never forgot that true impact came not from status but from how one treated others. The lesson Mr. Jenkins had unknowingly taught him remained at the core of everything he did. Meanwhile, Marcus Jenkins flourished in his role as a teacher. Inspired by his grandfather's story and Barron's act of generosity, he founded a mentorship program for underprivileged students, helping them find opportunities they never thought possible. His classroom became a place of hope, where students learned that success wasn't just about talent. It was about perseverance, support, and the willingness to uplift others. One day, Marcus received an invitation to an exclusive event, an award ceremony honoring individuals who had made a difference in their communities. To his surprise, Barron was the keynote speaker. As Marcus sat in the audience listening to Barron speak about the power of small acts of kindness, he felt a deep sense of pride. The little boy who had once listened to his grandfather's stories was now carrying forward a legacy of his own. After the ceremony, Barron and Marcus reunited. They embraced like old friends, their bond stronger than ever. "You know," Barron said with a smile, I think Mr. Jenkins would be proud. Marcus chuckled, holding up the worn key. I like to think he's still with us, watching. At that moment, a young woman approached them hesitantly. Excuse me, she said. I just wanted to say thank you. I was part of Marcus's mentorship program, and it changed my life. I'm graduating this year because of the opportunities he helped me find. Barron and Marcus exchanged knowing smiles. Another ripple, another life touched. And so, the cycle continued. What started as a simple act of generosity in a school parking lot had grown into something immeasurable. It had transcended time, reaching new generations, proving that kindness, once given, never truly stops. It echoes through lives, through communities, through history itself. And somewhere in a place beyond this world, Mr. Jenkins was surely smiling.